Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. All right, gentlemen. The hat's on. Game time. Why didn't the USSR annex Eastern Europe after World War II? Good question. I don't know. I would say maybe they wouldn't want to... My thought is like, all right, maybe they didn't want to tick off Great Britain and the US, but I don't think they cared. I mean, they just got millions of men killed by Germany, and I don't think that they would have taken that into account in there. I'm very interested in what this video has to say. The original link to the video, top of the description below, right below that, link to the Discord. Love for you to go over there, just click on it. More the merrier. Pull up a chair. My name's Connor, by the way, if you're new. I like to learn about history through YouTube videos. Let's do it. If you're not ready to learn, there's the door. Home ec is down the hall. You're in the wrong class.
The Soviet Union was once a widely impressive global superpower and the foundation of the massive Eastern Bloc throughout the Cold War period, encompassing Russia and its neighbors and having a heavy influence over the rest of Europe. The USSR was the polar opposite of the United States and its Western allies. We know that, ultimately, the Soviet Union met an inevitable demise as communism crumbled across the East. Would this have...
My God, I was watching... My voice just cracked. I'm like going through second puberty. Sorry, I'm pausing, but I was watching Rambo 3. So painful to watch. There couldn't have been a movie that aged worse. It's when Rambo's like fighting with the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, like against the Soviets. And now look at where we are. Oh, that aged poorly.
Changed if the USSR as communism crumbled across the East? Would this have changed if the USSR had consolidated its authority even further? What if the Soviets had incorporated all of Eastern Europe? And more importantly, why didn't they?
I'm surprised they didn't. I really don't have a clue.
This video is sponsored by Private Internet Access.
If you guys want to skip through, the least I can do is play their sponsors.
Which is a simple-to-use VPN application for Android, iOS, Mac, Windows, and more. Using a VPN is for sure a necessity nowadays. And with Private Internet Access, all of your traffic goes through an encrypted tunnel. Your IP address is hidden and your data is protected.
How you guys doing?
And besides that, they have world-class next-gen server infrastructure in over 75 countries.
You'll be good soon.
You get a secure, reliable VPN connection anytime, anywhere, and it's a very transparent VPN provider. It is 100% open source, and anyone can see the code and examine how safe the app is. You can even use one subscription to protect up to 10 devices at the same time. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so click my link below to try it out risk-free so you get complete digital privacy for less than $3 a month and 2 extra months for free.
The Soviet Union, officially titled the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, was first established in 1922 and spanned over parts of Europe and Asia with its roots in Soviet Russia. The reason why Moscow never consolidated its power throughout all of Eastern Europe has a bit to do with money and a tad to do with politics, but at least some to do with the strategies of Joseph Stalin himself. First, it's important to look at how the Soviet Union was initially formed and what state it was in prior to the outbreak of the Second World War. The period following the First World War saw a chaotic and evolving status of the Russian state. After the Russian Revolution, Civil War, and Red Terror, a treaty was signed between Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, and what was then known as the Transcaucasian Federation of modern-day Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan in 1922. This treaty officially established the USSR under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin in Moscow. Upon Lenin's death in 1924, Joseph Stalin rose to command in his place and focused first on fortifying his power within the Union he already had. Economy and development became a priority, and the new dictator enacted a series of 5-year plans in hopes of boosting the Soviet economic growth as well as speeding up industrialization and collectivizing agriculture. The Communist Party was too concentrated on establishing their ideal market.
If I make a lot of commie jokes, I'm not really serious. I'm just like, I like to make
state
Let's
to
go.
worry about anything else at this point. And this building process continued all the way up to the commencement of World War II. The USSR quickly decided to enter and occupy Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia in 1940, but this was not as unpredictable as one might assume. These territories had actually been fused with Imperial Russia before the formation of the Soviet Union. So when a deal was brokered with Germany that allowed the Soviets to retake these lands, they did so with significant ease. Finland would also cede some of its territory to the USSR as a result of the Russian-Finnish War around the same time. But nonetheless, this was yet again a region very familiar with the old Imperial Russia. The Soviets found further success, though, when Romania gave up its lands as we know today by the name of Moldova. During the war, for obvious reasons, the Soviet Union was rigorously preoccupied with the events of the conflict, but they still managed to take this opportunity to further expand. And by the end of the war, this sphere had expanded to incorporate Poland, East Germany, Romania, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, and Albania. Many wonder why the USSR didn't turn their influence into outright authority throughout this Eastern Bloc. But the truth is, if they had done so, it likely would have doomed the Union. One factor had to do with the contemporary relationship between the East and West. Though they had been allies during the war, the United States and the United Kingdom were not excessively fond of the Soviet Union. Tensions had only grown since the end of the war, and Joseph Stalin was not oblivious to this. As an intelligent strategist, he knew that if he were to fully incorporate the rest of the USSR's influential sphere, he would simultaneously erode the already weakened relationship he held with the West, which would put the Soviet Union as a whole in danger. Although they had technically won the war, the USSR had been devastated by the conflict. The ravaged states of the Union also meant that they would lack the necessary resources to confidently maintain strong security within an even larger USSR, knowing all too well that overplaying his hand in these circumstances would explode in his face from multiple sides.
A lot of you guys have asked me to react to the deaths in World War II visualized. I've already seen that video, along with the History of the World, I think, video. I've seen both of those, so amazing videos, but I just want to let you guys know I've already seen those. And it's insane how many people Russia lost.
Besides, Stalin had to come up with an alternative. The easiest way to maintain both influence and distant control of the Eastern Bloc would instead be to put Soviet-friendly governments in power in each surrounding state, rather than trying to bring them under the Moscow government. This tactic made it trickier for the West to accuse the Soviets of overstepping any boundaries, and it required much less economic and military involvement from the USSR as well. The economy was also a leading factor in why Stalin would have wanted to keep his union from expanding much further. The Soviets had to rebuild after peace.
The Bolshevik Revolution was seen by many as a world revolution. Looking at the coat of arms of the USSR, I do think the USSR is a cool. I like the sickle and hammer. I think that's a cool symbol. We can see it contain the whole world. That's true. After a few years, it became clear that there is no global revolution in sight. After the war, the USSR was not a global project anymore. There were some opinions of some communists from Eastern European states about joining the Soviet Union, but nothing happened.
was made, and that would be enough of a challenge as is. The thought of adding more states into the Union that would also need to be reconstructed after the war was utter lunacy and could not be truly considered. There was simply no way that it could be done, and would only serve to self-destruct the USSR in its entirety. For these reasons, it was not the plan of Joseph Stalin to seize more of the Eastern Bloc, which would instead remain independent and simply uphold pro-Soviet governments. But after Stalin's death, even more contributing factors came to light. At first,
Who is after
the
Stalin?
Soviets seemed to be in a strong position
Brezhnev?
by the 1950s, and 2 years after Stalin's death, the Warsaw Pact was established as a response to the creation of NATO, and appeared to confirm the Soviets' capability across the Eastern Bloc. Without the
Sorry, I missed that.
death, the Warsaw Pact was established as a response to the creation of NATO, and appeared to confirm the Soviets' capability across the Eastern Bloc, without the needs to officially claim the rest of the sovereign territories. While the Warsaw Pact would later crumble, for now, it proved that the Soviet strategy had paid off. Back at home in Moscow, though, the next decades would demonstrate something very different. In a period marked by de-Stalinization and the Cold War concurrently, the Soviet government began to change. Nikita Khrushchev, who took control after the fall of Stalin, was
very critical of Stalin's policies. He's talked about the damage done by Joseph Stalin's cult of personality and the crimes committed against the people in the Soviet Union. I noticed a similar thing happened in after Mao died. Mao is still a revered figure in China. Stalin not so much in the Soviet Union. But I noticed that once those key figureheads died, they had to go. In order to implement socialist policies or I'm no expert. Communist policies. You need to make the money, which is easier to make in a capitalistic system, and so they saw the use of lowering regulations enough to create the capital that they needed in order to distribute it.
Widely critical of his predecessor, and swiftly moved to pass reforms that would improve the Soviet living conditions and change the current status quo.
Mao didn't
These
like
new
Khrushchev.
shifts didn't sit well with the Communist Party, though, and Khrushchev was ousted by his own party in 1964. It wasn't just the Communist Party that was showing resistance either. Multiple rebellions had broke out throughout the Soviet sphere, and the liberalization process occurring in the Warsaw state of Czechoslovakia became enough of a threat that the Soviets, along with the rest of the Warsaw states, minus Albania and Romania, invaded their own ally. This was merely the start of a new wave of turmoil that would not only ruin the USSR, but also made it abundantly clear that still any idea to incorporate the rest of Eastern Europe into the Soviet Union would be dangerously impossible. Essentially, the reason why the USSR never incorporated the rest of its eastern neighbors into the Union can be simplified to say that there was never a good time. The more complex answer, of course, would be that the West was always a threat and would have undoubtedly reacted with great resistance if the Soviets had attempted to claim their influential sphere as part of the USSR.
Is that being a bit hypocritical? Because isn't that exactly what the West did with the territory they had? If I'm wrong, let me know.
This doesn't even include the cost that it would take to restore the Soviet infrastructure, military, and everything else that the war had wasted. If the USSR had expanded, they would have been charged with the duty of not only repairing their own foundation, but of doing the same for their new...
Sorry, I guess they weren't technically called, it's not like West Germany and France were called Great Britain or U.S. territory, but...
consolidated territories. Not every satellite state or sovereign nation within the Soviet sphere was an inherent ally. Many revolted against their Moscow-backed governments. It would have likely taken an exertion of military force on behalf of the Soviets to keep these states within the Union, and even if they could have handled this, it may not have been worth it. And lastly, the rise and fall of neighboring Yugoslavia begs one more question. Would ethnic discord...
Wait, so Bosnia and Herzegovina Herzegovina, I don't know how you pronounce it, do have a little coastline there.
Have caused yet another challenge. One more question. Would ethnic discord have caused yet another challenge for the USSR if it had expanded over the entire East? There seems to be endless explanation.
In the Soviet Union, only about 50% were ethnic Russians out of a population of 286 million in 1990. Together with the Warsaw Pact states excluding Albania, the population would have been around 400 million, and only 35% would have been Russian.
For why the Soviet Union never expanded beyond its initial peak. So the real question may not be why didn't the USSR incorporate the rest of Eastern Europe, but instead, why would they have even tried?
Good points. I was really clueless going into there why, but I suppose there are a lot of good points. Didn't have the even if they did have the ability, it maybe not have been worth it. It might have been just easier to have them as the puppet states that they were. Okay. Sorry if I sounded a bit like a jackass during that video, but Knowledge, yeah, great channel. Hit all the buttons. Love for you to join the Discord if you want to learn more about history. See you guys next time. Follow my TikTok.